Yep, that's me vacuuming a path. I'm gonna get to what in the world is going on there in just a few minutes. Hey everyone, Erin here, and today I want to talk to you about garden paths. And I love garden paths. I think that garden paths say more about your garden and tell someone what your garden is supposed to feel like quicker than almost any other element of a garden, and I'm including plants in that. So all of these factors, the formality of a path, the materials that go into it, how wide it is, it tells people something about your garden. And then you also need to balance this with how you're going to create a path, because a path is something that is very DIY-able, but not every type of path is easily DIY-able. So you have to kind of balance the feeling you want from a path with where your budget's at, if you want to build this yourself. And it can be kind of a lot to work through. So I'm a bit of a garden path aficionado. I love studying people's paths, what makes them work, and I've built several of them, which range from just a mowed area of grass to the one that I'm standing on now, which is our path from our garage to our house, which is the most path-like path, I guess you would say, at our house. And the thing with paths is that the amount of maintenance you're going to have to put into them, and none of them are maintenance free, depends a lot on the materials you use and how you construct it. So this path, which goes from our garage to our house, was created in 2011, and that's when we had finished a renovation on the house, and I created these gardens that are back here. Before this was just grass, and then this area over here was just weeds. Now I had started working on this area a little bit before that, but I really designed the area in 2011 and created the gardens that are along the deck. The deck was new at the time, that was part of the renovation. And then we created this sort of circle of grass and made this area at that point, and that's when we did the path. So before that, this was just walking through the grass. We had a few stepping stones through the gardens that were right at the end by the patio, but beyond that, this was just grass. And as you might imagine, a well-traveled grass path in an area with snow and ice and shoveling, that's not going to make your grass look very good. So that's when I did this path. So let's just talk about a few of the considerations that come when you're deciding what kind of path to do. The first is formality. This takes into consideration the formality of your gardens, the formality of your house, the whole feel you want when someone's walking down a path. And generally speaking, formality usually equals straight lines. I'm not saying you can't have a formal curvy path. I'm just saying if you're trying to get a formality across, a straight line will do that much easier than a curved line. Now, there's nothing about my garden or my house that is formal. So a straight path and a very formal path was not anything that ever would have looked right here, which is why we did sort of gentle, undulating curves. But there's one thing about curves. You have to make them intentional. There has to be a reason for a path to curve. If you have a curve in a path and someone can see their destination from there, they will just keep walking straight, unless there's something that blocks their view or there's some reason for them to go around a curve. If you can see where you're going and there's nothing in your way, you're always just going to want to walk in a straight line. And we kind of did a little bit of both with this path. Now, while this path is curvy, it's actually also a straight line, because you could actually walk in a straight line from the beginning of the path to the end of the path, but you'll just be kind of skirting the edges of the curves. But I did build in reasons to have to curve here. So for instance, right here by the patio, we have a tree here. Now there was always some type of tree here. This dogwood is actually new about 5 years ago. But this tree means you have to kind of bow out a little bit. And then we've actually used trees and shrubs again as we walk down the path. So right here, this tree, this is Picea engelmanni blue magoo, which is not in the best of health, but has good top growth and has a clematis growing up the trunk of it. This sort of stops you. There is a visual barrier between here and where you're going, so you know you can't walk straight, you have to walk around it. Even though this tree was planted at the same time I built the path, the intention here is to make your brain think, oh, the path curves because there's a tree here. And then we come to this blue globe spruce, and then behind it the maple. Now the maple, originally that was a summer snowflake viburnum, which got quite big, but died, and I replaced it with this. Again, we've got trees here, so we're curving now the other way so that we have to go around these trees. And that's what I mean about blocking views and creating reasons for people to curve. And here's that view as we come this way. You know, there's always something obscuring a little bit so that your inclination isn't just to walk straight, although even on this path you could. The next factor to consider is materials. And there's a trade-off here. There's no perfect material because everything has pros and cons and drawbacks. And at some point, you're probably just going to come up with a gut idea of what is the right material for your path. Now, a fully paved path is by far the lowest maintenance of any of them. But a fully paved path also tends to, of course, there's different materials you can choose from, but it definitely, again, lends itself to a little bit more sense of formality. And for me, the biggest factor is it's very permanent. And you better make sure you nail that path right. For instance, I drive by a garden path in front of a house all the time that's fully paved, and it's there and it's permanent, and it's got some really unnecessary odd little curves in it, and I see we're on the grass where people are cutting across the grass because it makes no sense the way that path is, and I'm just guessing those people are wishing they had a do-over on that path. And of course, there's a million different kinds of path materials you can go with. On this path, I used a combination of flagstone and reclaimed bluestone from my grandmother's house, which was really nice. And I didn't have enough of that to do the whole path, so I just did kind of sections of it. When it rains, it actually looks quite interesting. And then between those, I did a stone chip or a gravel. So I went with the stone chips for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that I had tried in previous iterations of this path where it was just kind of by the patio here, I had tried just flagstones and growing really pretty ground covers between, which is a look that I love, by the way. And I tried several ground covers. I tried a lot of creeping thyme, I tried Irish moss, there were several other ones that I tried, and none of them work. I found myself replacing all of them every single spring. Because this path is walked on in winter, that creates compacted soil and ice, and there is no plant in the world that likes that. And where it did come back, it was far more likely that weeds would get in there. So then I was weeding around these other ground covers, and it never worked, and it was never the look that I liked. I do, however, love gravel. Even though you're not walking on the gravel here, you do get a little bit of a crunch of gravel every once in a while. It's a more casual look, certainly, than a filled joint or something like that. And I do have other gravel areas around the garden that I think it ties in well. Now compare that with the stone chips in the circle garden. These paths are skinny and they are meant for just walking around this garden to see what's in it. So they make that satisfying crunch and they look nice, although they certainly could use some weeding right now, which we're going to get to. And you might remember this path that we made last year to deal with a change in grade. So we basically created stairs out of large chunks of stone, and then we used more of these same decorative stone chips as the treads for this area. And I think it sets the right tone of inviting and easy to walk on without being super formal or imposing in the landscape. Of course, the simplest path is simply a mown stretch of grass. And so in this area, we've sort of necked this path down to lead to the bridge. We don't walk on it that often, so we don't have to worry about durability, but it's inviting enough and it tells you like what you're meant to do, which is go over there. And then we get even more casual on the other side of the bridge where I've just got this used to be a mulch path that actually needs to be remulched, but just a mulch path over here. Now finally in this area, which are the gardens near our driveway, we just have a wood chip path. But it's a wide wood chip path because I needed this path to work for taking wheelbarrows down. This is an often traveled path. But by the same token, these gardens are extraordinarily casual. They have a much different feel to them. It's a very natural feel over here. That's the point of these gardens. So a stone path would not have been appropriate here. It adds formality that doesn't need to be here. Wood chips is very natural, very cheap, and very easy. Now, if I had unlimited funds and someone to do it for me, a wood plank path through here would be fabulous, but that wasn't in the cards, and this works just fine. So I think you can see how the width of a path, the materials that it's made of, really affects the feel of a path, which you probably already knew just from a gut reaction of having walked on paths, but until you start thinking about it, sometimes you don't necessarily get that connection. Flagstone paths are really popular, and I think they're a great DIY option. However, be mindful when you are shopping for stones. Sometimes if you buy flagstone off the rack, you will get all the same size. They're a nice size that's easy to move, but what you often end up with is 2 stones side by side throughout your entire path. And that is a terrible look. So you'll notice in this path that I have a few very large stones. I think I have 3 stones that are wide enough to span the entire width of a path, such as this blue stone right here. Then I have a mix of stones that are about 75% the width of the path, and we'll pair those with a quarter. So what I tried to do here was get 3 across, 2 across, 1 across, mix up that pattern throughout this path. I also wanted to make sure that the ends had a nice wide stone to start on because it just feels good starting off with a really solid foot, so that whether you step in the middle or off to the right, you're definitely going to have a full foot on a stone. So think about those things when you're laying your flagstones. So let me tell you how I constructed this path. So the first thing I did was dug out this whole area. We probably dug it out to a depth of a minimum of 8 inches, I want to say, because we wanted a really strong base. Again, remember, this is a frequently traveled path, so durability means really good base work. There are other places that I've laid flagstones, like a few stepping stones in front of the vegetable garden, that I have just put right in the soil, and for a 3-foot stretch, that's just fine. But for a long path that you need to stay level for a long period that is going to be used frequently, you really have to think about proper construction techniques with that. So then we filled that in with, here we call it limestone screenings. This product depends on where you live in the country. Some people call it road base. What it basically is a non-precious material that's relatively cheap that can be compacted really, really well. Crucially, I did not use any landscape fabric in constructing this path or any path in this garden. I do not like landscape fabric. Now, I'm sure you will find people who have built paths like this and have used landscape fabric and are very, very happy that they did it. My issue with landscape fabric, and I have talked to landscapers who have said the same thing, is that landscape fabric is amazing for the first 4 or 5 years. But once things start, soil gets created on top of that, either by blowing in or from a material breaking down and essentially creating compost. Then you have soil sitting on top of landscape fabric, and then you have to try to get that out. Weeds grow through it. It is almost impossible to pull landscape fabric out, and it will create an impossible problem in the case of a path like this. You would have to rip out the entire path to get rid of that landscape fabric. So for me, it's a no. If you love it and it works for you, then you should do that. But I don't prefer to build paths that way, and if I'm recommending it to people, I recommend that they don't use landscape fabric. So then I put in the rocks, and I use leveling sand to level these out, and some more of that limestone screenings, which is fine enough that you can kind of mold it around the bottom of a rock and a level, and you just go piece by piece and you try to level it out. And then the next piece of the puzzle is edging. Now, if you're going to use any kind of loose material, edging is non-negotiable. You must have it, or it will mix in with your garden beds. But in particular, you'll notice on this path, we have some areas where there are garden beds on the side of it, and some areas where there's grass on the other side of it. So even if we had done this as a path with ground covers between the stones, we would have wanted edging because the grass would have just grown right into it. So this path did a great job for 12 or 13 years, but I got a little lax on maintenance, and it really needed a redo for a couple of reasons. The first was the metal edging. So there's a lot of different kinds of metal edgings on the market, and I think I've used almost every kind of them. The first is the kind that has stakes built into the edging. That is my least favorite of the ones I've tried. They're very hard to get the pieces to sit together properly. They really don't go down very far, so they aren't in there very well. They push over quite easily. I don't find those to be durable. They're the easiest to find, probably the easiest to install, and probably work pretty poorly in my experience. The kind of edging we had in here before was a kind where there were little pockets that the stakes went into. And it was a steel edging, but it was pretty thin. And over time, what happened was in the places where we go over the edging, like for instance, when we need to move the lawnmower from that part of the grass to that part of the grass, we drive right over the metal edging. And that edge collapsed and was not looking good, so the grass was starting to get into the path. The other problem with this path is that this section right here was never laid properly. So there was a big dip here. It was not level. It's still not perfectly level. I can see that with my eye, but there was a big dip here. So in winter, we would get like an icy lake in this stretch. So for the past almost 2 months, I've been working on this path because honestly, it was not a job I was looking forward to doing. I made this path once. I was not really looking forward to having to fix it, but we got it done. It wasn't the worst, and it feels very good to have it finished. So we needed to replace the metal edging. In this case, we went with an edging that actually bolts together, has stakes that you can put anywhere and you just pound them in. It's thicker weathering steel, so it's not Corten steel because that's a brand name, but it's the same thing. It's weathering steel, so it will turn rusty, and the stakes can go anywhere, and it looks like one piece. So like right here, you can see where the joint is. And on the other side of this, there are bolts that hold each piece together. So when we set this in, this entire 57-foot long piece had to go in one sinewy snake. So I am really happy with this edging. It was more expensive than other kinds. I did buy it myself, and I will put a link in the description for you if you're looking for what it is. You can check it out there. So far, so good on it. The installation was difficult, but I'm very happy with the finished product on it. But we got to talk about maintenance, because every path has maintenance, and this one still has maintenance. What had happened was the weeds had gotten in there, and they were bad. I could not get them out because what had happened was, once again, the weeds had broken down, created more soil. Basically, everything was growing in a nice little clump of soil underneath like 2 bits of gravel. So I had to scrape out between all these joints. And when it came to cleaning out all those cracks, this is the tool that came in super handy. This is the mini Cobra head weeder. I've had Cobra head weeders for a long time. This mini one was perfect for this project because it just had a lot more leverage on it. They make it in a regular length, a long length on a big pole, and this Cobra head is a really nice Wisconsin company, family owned, small company. I think it's just a husband and wife who are doing it mostly, and these have been around forever, and gardeners tend to love these tools. And it's one of those tools that you never know what you're going to use it for, but it's sturdy enough to use it for whatever, including scraping gravel and dirt out of cracks. And that is where the vacuum came in, because I couldn't get that gravel scooped out of there enough for it not to fall back in the holes. So what I did was I scraped everything out, took away the big chunks, and then sucked out the rest. And actually, it worked really well. So if you have a grass path, you're gonna have to mow it. If you have a wood chip path, you're gonna have to occasionally replace those wood chips. The one thing that's nice about that is that those wood chips tend to break down into a lovely mulch. So if you have the energy, you can scoop those out, put them in your beds, use them as mulch, and then bring in more wood chips. If you have a plain gravel path, like I do in my vegetable garden or over here in the circle garden, you're just gonna have weeds. And the best and most badass way to control weeds in a stone path application or in a gravel path situation is by far a propane flame weeder. At the end, I'm going to give you a quick how-to on how to use a propane flame weeder. If you hit them when they're little, they're incinerated and they're gone. And that's what I'm going to do on this path. And that is the maintenance that I should have done. I mean, I've been doing that. I just didn't do it frequently enough. So the lesson I learned with this path kind of falling apart from a weed standpoint was that you just got to hit it up with the propane torch. Of course, you could use a spray weeding of some sort of spray, but the weed torch is way more fun and no chemicals, so that's great. The last part of path making decisions comes down to whether it's going to be used at night or not. And if it is, you're going to need some kind of lighting. Now, of course, we walk in this path all day and night, so we absolutely need lighting here. And for years, up here, among the climbing hydrangea in the corner there, we've had a motion activated light up there. And it's quite a bright light, and it was great. You walk on the path, everything is lit up all the way to the house. But that is not a perfect solution, and I'll tell you why. The first one is that sometimes it would go off on its own, probably when a deer was walking through the yard. The deer doesn't care about the light. That light, though, goes straight into our bedroom. So suddenly the bedroom was like lit up, because like I said, it was bright. So that was not great. Then we found another little quirk with it, which was that it was not happy with extreme temperatures. So in winter, when it was super cold, below zero, it would go on and it would stay on. And we were the people who installed the light not on a switch. We just hardwired it straight in there. So we couldn't even turn the switch off on it to make it stop doing that. And actually, it became really a problem this past winter because we tried to cover up the motion sensor. We tried to do everything with it, but it seemed to have gone haywire. So we eventually just pointed it straight down until we could deal with it. And when we were gone on vacation, we got a text from our neighbors saying, "Why is your garage light shining in our house?" And we certainly didn't think it was because we pointed it straight down. But apparently there was enough light coming through here that it was going into some of their kids' bedrooms. And they were not happy about that, and we weren't home to fix it. So that light clearly needed to go. Now there are beautiful electric path lights out there. So many cool landscape lighting options, but that is an expense and a hassle that I really wasn't interested in. I just didn't want to have to hire somebody to come lay electric. I didn't really want to do it myself. This time of year, it's not the project I want to be doing. And that is where the Hoselink solar lights come in. And this video is sponsored by them. And shout out to Hoselink for being probably the only company in the world who would allow me to go on this long about how to build a path, not to mention their product until way into this part of the video. But I've used their solar lights now for many years, and we use them on the path that I built last year, and they are amazing. They are amazing. That path is not in full sun over there. Those lights are on every single night, no problem. The globe lights that I got from them 3-4 years ago now that are over in the vegetable garden come on every single night all winter long. We've left them out. They are the best solar lights I've ever heard of in my life. And they had a new style that I wanted to bring to this path because I think it works really well with the style of what we have going on the deck, and there's a feature with it that is really cool. Okay, so these are the stainless steel lights. They're a little bit taller than the ones I did before. They have a plate at the bottom, so you can actually mount these. They come with the screws. You can mount these. These would be very good on a dock or a deck, whatever. You can certainly mount them there, but they also come with a plastic stake that you can just put in the bottom, and that's how I use mine, and then that goes straight into the ground. So what's really cool about these is that these have 3 options for how you can use them, including one that's not available on any of the other Hoselink lights to my knowledge. So the first setting is that they're on and they're dim all the time. The second setting is that they're on dim, but when they're motion activated, when they sense motion, they go, I think for 30 seconds, they go to a bright light. And that's the setting that we have on the lights that we put on the path last year. So those lights are on all the time, very low setting, but when you get close to them and you go down the path, they brighten up. But the final setting on these, and the one that I really wanted these for, was that there's a setting for them being off all the time, but only motion activated. So you only get the bright light when you're using it, when it's motion activated. And that is what we want out here, because I don't want this path lit up all night long. There's no reason for this path to be lit up all night long. We just need it to be functional. Place these in the garden, and what's nice about this is that they're tall enough to sort of mingle with the plants. And I've spaced them out. I think I've used 5 on this path. So I've spaced them out so that there will always be light where you're walking on the path. I've tucked one like around this corner right here. And then we go to here, and this is the little dog path offshoot. So this is the dog path that goes out to the grass. because we knew the dogs were going to cut through. Goes to here, and then we've got a final one over here. And they're bright enough that I don't need the lights on both sides, so I can alternate like that. And I think you can see, hopefully, that they sort of match the feel of our deck here, because we've got the stainless steel cable railings on the deck. And I think the whole feel is very in keeping with this side of the house. And I think you can see as we walk down the path here that this is truly, you know, an accent to the path, not a distraction from the path. And it, once again, works with the feel that I'm trying to create here. So you will find a link to these lights and all of the really nice solar lighting options that HoseLink has in the description. Please make sure to check those out. I am so happy with, well, everything I've gotten from HoseLink actually, but in particular the solar lights. They have blown my mind as to what solar lights can be, and I know you will be happy with them too if you opt to go that way. All right, so on paths, get all these elements right. Create not just a place to get from one place to another in your garden, but something that sets the stage for how you want to feel in your garden and how visitors to your garden should feel. Because it's not just a path, it's the invitation to explore your garden. All right, if you have stayed this long and you want to see how to use a weed torch, now's your chance. First, hit like, subscribe, follow along. Now let's go do some weed torching. All right, here we are with the flame weeder. So this is a Red Dragon. I'll put links to this. I have tried the small flame weeders that just use like a campfire size gallon of propane. Don't bother, they don't have the power. So if you're really gonna use a flame weeder, get a good one and then just attach it to a 20-pound propane tank. It works great because when you run out of propane for your grill, you've got a spare sitting around, or vice versa. And then this one I bought the little lever control with, which is not really necessary, to be honest. The valve worked just fine. So make sure you got everything open on it, all your valves open. And make sure this valve is open. Then I just take a little sparker and we're going. So the key with this is we want to make sure that we're just running it across plants, right? So like, just do it until it slightly wilts and turns bright green. You're not trying to incinerate anything. So that's all you have to do with that part of it. So there's probably little weeds in all these little cracks that I can't see yet, so I just run across it like this. So do you see how I just turn those bright green and they immediately desiccate? Now the one thing you want to be careful of is watch out for your plants that you care about, because it incinerates those too. So that's all you have to do. And then when you turn it off, close it from the tank first, and then work your way down the line so that all the propane goes out of the line. So the important thing here is that we're not trying to incinerate weeds, we're trying to desiccate them. And it has things to do with blowing apart cell walls and all that, but basically it forces the plant to try to create energy, to push all its energy into creating new leaves and solving that desiccation problem. And what happens is when you're dealing with small plants like this is that there just isn't enough energy in the plant, and therefore it dies down to the roots. If you just burn off the top, the roots are still going to be there. So that's why we do this just until you'll see it turn bright green and then wilt and stop. And that's all you need to do. Again, this works much better on smaller weeds. When you get into bigger weeds, there's a lot more energy for them there to regrow and to get past this problem, so you'll have to hit them over and over again. So the trick is, do it when the weeds are small, do it often, and do watch out for burning or getting too much heat close to your plants. You'll notice here that I have not talked about safety. I am not the safety police. Don't be stupid. That's all I'll say. Have a hose nearby. Don't try to burn things that light on fire. Wear some shoes. That's all I'm going to say. Go forth and burn carefully and don't burn your house down. All right, that's my propane weeder tip for you. Enjoy. It's a fun way to deal with weeds.